All right. Mr. J.D. Dillard, you're ready to present the cases.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. First case before you tonight is REZ-2025-10, the Rodney Cain property located north of Hayhire on Long 41. It is currently zoned R-21, and the request is for a rural plan development in order for an RV park to be developed. You note here the current zoning pattern. The PDR to the south is Mr. Cain's former RV park. The property immediately to the south of the subject property is a mobile home community, which is for rent. And the outlined blue parcel there is the parcel in question, which as you see is zoned R-21. The future land use maps depicts it as rural residential and it is in the rural service area. And you'll note some wetlands depicted on the property. We'll get into that a little bit farther on the site plan, but here's an aerial of the subject property. To the very north there, you can see the existing mobile home RV park to the south, the Justin Cain Street mobile home community, and then Mr. Cain's property again, now zooming in a little bit closer. Again, approximately 21 acres all in total. However, a large portion of it, as you saw in those wetlands, and that's delineated by Aero Engineering, as you see here. You'll also notice the 1.33 acres in the corner there. That is Mr. Cain's residential property himself. He's including it in this zoning request. And one of the conditions on the site plan, which you'll see, is to remain as a residential use governed by R1 standards moving forward. So with that being said, this is the proposed overall. You'll note a total of 66 total RV spaces, including an office, a bathhouse, and pavilion. I'm going to zoom around the property a little bit to give you a little more detail. Starting with the east end here, you do see the Cain property. Again, you also notice the 24-foot ingress-egress proposal along 41, which is required as this is a corridor overlay road. There is an alternative, which you notice there, called the driveway stub-out. This is if Mr. Cain's personal property were to become an office sometime in the future. It would allow for interconnectivity in a loop road fashion from the existing driveway onto the property. You'll also have a couple notes there on the side of the site plan, talking about the governing standards, that it shall be done in accordance with the supplemental standards for RV parks and or residential agricultural zoning standards. So with that being said, again, we continue to move around the property to the southwest. You will note the hatched areas are 20-foot buffers, which are required for the zoning being requested adjacent to the R21 residential zoning pattern. Notice to the west, the property is bordered by the Georgia Southern Florida Railroad, and again to the north and east by other private party owners. Here's a rough overlay of that site plan on the adjoining property owners. And with that being said, the TRC did analyze this request, did notice the neighboring land uses, the previous history of mobile home parks and RV parks, the viability of a public well and septic system, which has to be approved by the EPD for this use, and therefore recommended approval of this request per the site plan. Now, we do have some additional notes in the packet. These are not necessarily conditions, but just for awareness. Future parking and internal drive areas are to be constructed with an approved permeable or pervious pavement material, where the material shall be subject to approval by the county engineer. ULDC regulates RV parks and campgrounds, limit the occupancy of individual lots to a maximum of 90 days, and the EPD approval for a tourist accommodation site, including the well and septic design, are required at the time of construction. So, again, with that being said, the TRC did recommend approval for the site plan.
Jody, is there any way you can put that on here, because we don't have anything? If you make a motion, you can't even, you don't have anything.
Understood. Are you looking for the overall site plan?
No, looking for what you just read.
Those last things I read were not conditions. They were already supplemental standards that are required per the ULDC.
So no conditions?
No conditions. No, the conditions are listed there on the site plan regarding the total number of spaces, the 66 spaces, the buffering, the R1 for Mr. Cain's property, and then any supplemental standards guiding the overall development of the park.
Can you go back to the aerial view of the property?
Yes, ma'am.
All that in the northwest corner is wetlands.
Yes, ma'am. You can see that here.
Period.
And that is proposed as an undisturbed buffer.
Jenny, did I hear you say something about, I'm just curious, all this, I mean, septic,
Yeah.
Well, except
Yes, sir. It requires EPD approval on the site plan.
Let me ask that.
Not in that area, no, sir.
What's the closest they are?
South of Hayhire,
South of here.
or west of I-75 for Creekside West. The nearest utility would be the city of Hayhires, but again, this is still so far out from that there are no public utilities available.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for staff? At this time, we will start the public hearing for this case. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this case?
My name is Rodney Terry, I'm with Prime Consulting Solutions, I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have. Do want to point out one thing, though, that there's over 7 acres of buffers on this property, so there's a lot of buffer. That wetland is to remain undisturbed for that site plan. That's just the main thing I wanted to kind of point out to y'all. I'm going to try to answer any questions you have.
Maybe I missed it, but where is the existing park at? The existing.
It's on the little
It's
south of
It's
South.
south of this
Yeah.
picture.
Yes.
Okay. Is it abut it?
No, sir, there's a mobile home park between the two parks.
Okay. Oh, okay. There we go.
Ronnie, what's the proposed road surface? I heard what JD said, what's the proposed?
We are just, right now, we don't have a firm grasp on that, but it's going to be, as you said, a pervious type surface, so either millings or lime rock or something on this.
All right.
On the part to the south, I believe they're crushed asphalt.
Is that what it is?
Well, no further questions, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to speak in favor of this case? There being none, is there anyone here that would like to speak against this case? There being none, that closes the public hearing portion of this case. Are there any further questions for staff?
I've got one question, Jane. I'm just always curious when we do these timelines and stuff. So who monitors 90 days?
Typically, that 90 days is in place of the property owner. Code enforcement can use it if a complaint arises to measure the time frame. But again, code enforcement is a complaint-driven department. And again, the 90 days is up to the property owner, gives them some rights if a citizen is causing issues to move them along. So,
That's the key verbiage if they call them
Complaint.
complaint driven. That's the key
Complaint-driven.
verbiage. Okay.
Commissioner Willis?
Yeah, as far as the millings or the lime rock, is there any specific criteria that's required, or can you use the millings and you can do that? Okay.
as long as the county engineer is approved of the overall design, yes, sir.
Okay. That's it.
And there was a question about the turnaround for that one road, Hammerhead or cul-de-sac possibly. Have we heard anything else on that?
Yes, sir. We recognize the fact that this site has not been fully engineered to meet final criteria. That would be a minor amendment to the overall site plan. And that's why it is noted for the possible driveway stub out back to the main driveway there. But yes, there was some initial concern based on the length of that stub out for those 8 RV spaces from fire's perspective in order to fully navigate apparatus.
Any further discussion?
Yes, sir.
All right, at this time we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, regarding REZ 2025-10, I make a motion that we approve this case as recommended by staff.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Commissioner Bailey.
With the condition, you have to add the conditions, or is that just?
That's never, no condition.
There's no condition, I was reading also.
May I recommend that you your motion for the site plan?
Oh, I'm sorry, for the site plan, yes.
That would cover the conditions, sir.
Just stating that they would have to use an impermeable surface, correct? good?